Do that again, right?
No, it's just a funny intro. I like this intro.
Okay. Yeah.
I have to laugh a bit.
All right.
Okay.
Okay. Might keep this in.
Yeah.
Hi everyone, it's Nyla, and today I've got with me another friend of mine, the wonderful Kat. Hi Kat.
Hi, Cameron.
Just tell me a little bit about who you are and what your life is like at the moment.
Well, I am a 21-ish year old, and I am basically like, I'm unemployed in this economy, and it's kind of like, I was going to come here and talk about like how it is for people who are younger and getting jobs nowadays, because everything is online, right? But that also makes things everything being impersonal. I like to go into places and ask for jobs, so I add that personal aspect. Some people will actually ask and say, give me your CV or whatever, but with bigger brands like Costa, let's say, they have a hiring system that is basically an AI is deciding based on like answers that you put down if you are applicable for the general job of barista or whatever you're applying for. And I'm thinking, okay, but how can you write something specific and then decide unspecifics about somebody in the workplace? Because let's say me, right, I'm autistic. I just don't really do normal social things, right? Like interact in certain ways. For example, I will like to do things alone. I will like to do certain parts of a job alone. Like if someone gave me a job, I wouldn't like to be expected to be doing it with multiple people at the same time, the same job. I'd be like, okay, put me on one job, right, I'll do it. But why can't we make it so in workplaces that's like able to be done? Because it is able to be done. There's a completely functional system there that you can use. Someone does one job, another person does one job, and another person does one job, instead of everyone being expected to work as a team, which you can still work as a team, just individually.
Right. So you don't think that work is really designed very effectively for someone who is on the autistic spectrum,
no,
such as yourself?
not. It's a lot of jobs are also overwhelming. Like, for example, let's say you do work in retail, let's say you work in Primark, right? Primark is usually loud. There's a lot of crying children, a lot of really loud people, and I feel like the lack of jobs for people who are autistic, neurodivergent, or anything in between who have hypersensitivity issues, that is so low in the workplace.
Well, I mean, for anyone that goes into Primark, it can be quite an ordeal, can't it? Because it is chaotic sometimes.
Yes.
So you see sort of people grabbing items and they're in a big pile, and it is overwhelming actually for a lot of people. But imagine that being multiplied several fold, and you've got the sort of scenario that somebody like yourself would feel faced with that kind of situation. So that must be really challenging, especially as a young person. You've got so many hopes about your future, and clearly one of those things is to, just like everyone else, get a good job.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I am hopefully working towards a barista position, and even though I'm autistic, I want to work as a security guard, night security to be specific, maybe in a mall or something like that. So I can walk around and guard in that way, and I want to learn things in that way, because there's a lot of things like emergency first aid you can use in daily life. Let's say someone has a crash or something like that, I would be able to give them emergency first aid because I have a license to do so.
Yes,
well.
indeed. So the two things that you've got kind of in mind at the moment are being a barista, so because you love coffee and preparing coffee and specialty coffees, and also being a security guard and doing security work. What sort of challenges do you feel are there for young people nowadays?
So I can mainly speak for autistic people, but I think for people in general who are younger, I think, like I said, getting a job, getting a place, now that's annoying and difficult because it's like a lot of landlords, especially if you have a younger looking face, will look at you and they will speak to the other person with the old looking face. So you need to find somebody like yourself
with an older
who
looking
looks
face,
a bit older and more mature, to be able to be the advocate.
Yeah,
for
which
them.
is, you know, a bit patronising,
Yeah,
really,
it
isn't
is
it?
patronising, and I think that young people are, treated as, well, younger and more immature nowadays. Even though I think we are facing problems of trying to get a place with a lack of, the economy is failing, everything's going up, I don't know.
Costs are going up.
Costs are going up and you don't get paid as much.
Yes.
So that sucks. A lot of people have 2 jobs, or they live with their parents until they're like literally, I know people
Maybe
who
40.
are like 40, and if you're not lucky and you don't get like inheritance, like loads of inheritance, you are pretty much doomed with a lack of money for most of your life.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that I'm going to be, I'm sure, talking to lots of people about, because that being trapped, if you haven't got a huge amount of money to put down as a deposit, plus the regular income that you need to get a mortgage, for example, or you haven't got a large inheritance that you've mentioned there. How have you negotiated looking after yourself as a person and caring for yourself in this difficult time?
Well, the trying to get a job thing, going out and like handing my CV in person if I can, because online is chaos and you're fighting against a bunch of people who know keywords and things, and you can also learn keywords but it doesn't work. So going and looking for jobs, indulging in my thing of barista work, because I do stuff at home. I make coffee at home. That's something I really like to do. Like in the morning I wake up, I put jazz on and I make coffee, and that's really nice. And then I basically just I'm exploring myself a bit more, my sexuality, my more like slightly more masculine appearance, and I hope to explore it more. So that's kind of how I'm taking care of myself.
Right, okay. Well, thanks for sharing, moving on to that particular subject, Kat, because you have changed in appearance quite a lot in the time that I've known you.
Yeah.
Which has been through realising more about yourself and feeling that you know yourself a bit more, would you say?
Yeah, 100%. Like I don't know if like maybe some people will relate to this on this, but with like gender identity and things like that, there's that whole spectrum of it, and I feel like when I was more feminine and appearing, I did have longer hair, like all the way down here, and it was just brown. Now I have red hair, that's cool. But like I looked more feminine, and I think I was pretending to be somebody. I won't say personal reasons why, but I will say there were a few obstacles in the way of me fully becoming myself, understanding myself, because of certain protection things I had to do with that. But now I am free of that. I am understanding that I think I want to appear more masculine. I don't know how far that will go until I'm comfortable, and honestly so far so good. I feel much more comfortable in my body and I finally feel like I'm being myself with it. So
good for you. Good for you, Kat.
I think I've had a lot more neurodiverse people around me recently, and that has sprung my confidence up, because I realised I was just speaking with the wrong people. And as much as neurodivergent and neurotypical people are similar in certain aspects, the way we speak, I've observed and also actually heard about, was, let's say I am speaking about something I really enjoy. Well, a neurotypical person will ask questions about it to be polite, right? Whereas a neurodivergent person will basically like relate with it to be polite. So I've had conversations with people who are neurotypical, and I've related to their points, and they have almost seemed like offended that I did or angry that I did,
Really?
rather
Okay.
than appreciative, and that is the major difference I noticed. So
Right.
I've been hanging around with people who are more neurodivergent, and I will say in some ways it's crippled me in talking to people who are neurotypical.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, because I'm used to speaking to people who speak like my own mind, right?
Well, I mean, I have to, sort of challenge something that you said, which is that neurotypical people talk to you about things just to be polite.
No, not just to be polite. I mean, they give questions to be polite. Like you
Well, they
will...
might be genuinely interested.
Oh yeah,
So...
100%. I think there is politeness in that. It's just the way of relating to some answer someone has said or some statement is quite different.
Right. Okay.
In that way.
Society as a whole, what other ways could it be shaped in a way that makes things fairer or better for you as a neurodivergent person, Kat?
Well, I think in general, I don't think it's making things easier for neurodivergent people and just people in general who are younger and maybe struggling to get a job.
Right.
And I think it's actually what Waterstones does, because they have a policy on their website to come in and ask for a job. And I think that is something that, yes, for people who are more anxious will struggle. I have social anxiety, I struggle and stuff like that, but I feel they can make it, nicer or something. Maybe there would be a person to speak to in the store or something. I feel like there should be different ways than applying online. I also think that there should be, I feel like there should be mandatory quiet places. I feel like that is something we really need, because we only have a few quiet places, libraries, churches, and I feel like not everyone wants to go into a library, or not every time the library is open. And then you have pubs that are always loud. Why aren't there quiet places in pubs? Why aren't there quiet places in certain, restaurants or things like quiet rooms? Why aren't there, usual quiet places on trains? Because there is, but they're so hard to find that you can't really find them.
For sure.
And that's silly, because I've been on trains where babies are crying, and I have nothing against babies, but they cry and it sets off my autism and my ears, and I get panicky almost. And that is same for mouth sounds. And, I feel like there should just be an area where it's quiet. That's why I wear my Sony Mark V, not sponsored, because they have brilliant noise cancelling, also not sponsored.
It's interesting that you say that applying for things online really is a big thing for you, and a big kind of negative, because so much happens online, and a lot of people with autistic spectrum conditions do spend a lot of time online. Yeah. So, so it's a double-edged sword almost.
Yeah, and I do think maybe, I feel like mandatory interviews should be given, rather than actually filling a form in. I feel like you should be able to apply, maybe put your CV down, and they should interview you and ask you points about your CV, and actually value you as a person before they say, okay, this form is not filled out like this, we wanted this specific thing, and then cast you aside. Because what if you were genuinely just a really outgoing person, you were trying to apply for retail or something, right? But that didn't come across in your CV. That doesn't really mean anything. Your CV is literally just, I've done this, this is what I've done, this is a little brief description of me sometimes, and then that's it. But some people don't know how to write properly, etc, etc. I feel like they should give you mandatory interviews. I know it's going to take up someone's time a lot, and that would be difficult with everyone applying, but at the end of the day, I feel like they should have certain slots. Let's say they have 5 people can apply for this job, 10 people can apply for this. Cut it off. Don't let people keep applying and then cancel with a system or mandatory or whatever it is. They should just give interviews to those people in the slots. Then, let's say 5 of them, they don't like any of them. Okay, toss them aside. put the 5 slots back out.
I
do
think
that process.
I understand what you're saying, Kat, but I think the problem is that there's literally hundreds of people applying for each job in some cases. So it's just a numbers game, isn't it? That so many people apply that they're now using automation to filter out people, and you know, kind of then the people that have learned the game of how to write their CV and so on, or have got assistance in putting together a CV, or, you know, interview techniques, or, you know, sort of, because I do work with people to help them with that process, as you know, so it is a bit of a game in some cases. When I first started to look for jobs, and which obviously was a very long time ago, Kat, you didn't have online, so you had to fill in elaborate questionnaire, like elaborate application forms and things, which took a lot of effort. Do you think that but it meant that far fewer people applied for the jobs? Because obviously most people are not going to sit there for hours. Now it's just a click of a button, isn't it? Yeah. So I'm interested in hearing whether you think that's a better system. If still, if more it requires more effort, but it means that the dedicated people are the ones that are in with a shout.
I agree. I think to some extent, I think there is definitely like a good point in that system. I will say that, like, with attention nowadays, that would be difficult.
Absolutely.
It's almost impossible, actually. But also, this is also something where I think it can affect people who are, who have ADHD. So I feel like, it's a really hard question, but I still think the slot thing is better because it gives someone time to speak to somebody. Sure. And I think human evaluation is so much more powerful than AI evaluation. Even though AI is fantastic nowadays, it can't be a human, and it can never understand, oh, this person's personality is this, and this suits a job, but it can understand it in a logical perspective, not an emotional perspective.
The number of people that are just getting rejection after rejection. I mean, that in itself is very damaging, isn't it? Just the way that you feel. And then, of course, a lot of people don't even get a rejection. They're just completely ghosted.
That's the worst thing, because there are multiple things that I've applied for in the past that I've got ghosted for. And I'm thinking, why would I apply for a job if I'm not going to get a response? I'm just going to be wondering. Then I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to apply for every job. And they're like, but we want people, we're hiring. And it's like, okay, if you're hiring, give me a job. Honestly, give people temporary jobs, see how they actually function in the job. Don't just cast them aside because they've got one thing wrong on a CV. That's what really angers me, I suppose.
No, I mean, and there's real sense in what you're saying, that you can't actually tell before somebody is actually in that position how they're going to be. So so if you give more people a chance to kind of show the company what they're made of and how they can do things, and you'd end up with the best people doing the job ultimately. I mean, how feasible that is given like the way that things are done in companies and numbers of people and so on, I don't know, but it's still worth trying out, isn't it, in some places?
100%. I think all the wrong things are funded most of the time. Like, I think we fund roadworks that are copious, like they constantly do them, and I'm like, why are you constantly doing them? Why don't just make quality roads? I've literally never seen roadworks in the Netherlands, maybe once, and I've been there over a lot, right? And then there is this building near me, this thing being built. I don't know what it is. It took 16 years for it to be built. There was a whole plane there until it was. And I'm like, why is that being built? But then, there has been a traffic light thing, like an indicator, that has been broken for, I think, about 4.5 years, maybe 5 years, near me, in a busy area. And I'm thinking, hey, isn't that important?
Well, it
but
is,
this is apparently more important, the swimming bass looking thing. I'm like, okay, we love swimming bass, but there's about 50 of them around me. Why do I need another? I don't know if it's a swimming bath. It could probably be a shopping thing, but also shops, safety. I choose safety.
Right, okay, that's a great point. Yeah, indeed. If there's something that's as dangerous as traffic lights not being operational, that should be a priority.
Yeah, or at least a light on them, but the light is also important.
Absolutely,
so, yeah.
I mean, the road thing, don't get anybody on record. I did call in. This it's so funny, actually. There's a part of the road at the bottom of my road. Every year they resurface the road, and every year that part of the road, every year water keeps bubbling back up. So I contacted our water company and said, why don't you fix the leak that's clearly there?
Yeah.
Because this has been going on for like over a significant period of time. And they came out and assessed it, and they said, oh, well, it's nothing to do with us. It's a council. It's probably nothing to do with us. They weren't sure.
Yeah.
They said, oh, it's probably the council needs to do something about the storm drains or something. It's just so much passing the buck onto somebody else,
Yeah.
So there's no responsibility for anything. So this issue is carried on year after year after year because no one's taking responsibility for it. So
yeah,
I thought it was quite amusing.
Yeah, I do feel there's definitely that type of culture in this country where I feel like most companies and most people will be like, well, no, it's their job. No, it's their job. No, it's their... And then there's no one's job. It's no one's job anymore, to fix the roads or do anything. Because I've literally seen diggers being abandoned on sites for days. And I'm like, but why aren't you doing your job? It's a Tuesday. I'm like, come on. Like, why are we not... This is in the centre.
Sure.
Not outside in the middle of nowhere. In the centre of like an area that I like used to live. And I'm like... There's loads of shops here, loads of people like commute here, loads of things. There's a train station, God's sake, across the road. Why are there diggers just being abandoned for like a week?
I don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah. You feel good about, better about life yourself. How can you extend that optimism, Kat? What are you hoping for in the future?
The job thing. Maybe barista, security job, but also like to do more photography and things. Yeah. There is one thing I do really, really love about this country, and it is when you're able to get there, the countryside.
Yeah, and, we share a love of the countryside, don't we?
I love the countryside, I love the architecture. I went somewhere today and there was loads of like really old looking buildings. I've never been there, that part of Birmingham ever, and there was like older buildings, and that's one thing I do love about this country. I think that we should preserve our architecture more because I think like the architecture of this place that we're at, which is more of a church-like building, that is quite beautiful.
It is.
Quite old, quite nice. You want to go inside somewhere where you can still socialise and do things, but there's no areas like that to do things. That's another point which I could go on to. But
that's another good point about community space, or not even to do with the community around you, but just places where you can spend time with other types of people maybe as well. Yeah, I mean, that is diminishing. Definitely. It's one of the things that I'm very passionate about, reviving that sort of dialogue with people and getting to know people. It's gone round in a circular way to what you were discussing at the beginning, which is around how difficult online being forced to be online has made things for you.
We have, I think, in some ways, I think we have advanced with technology, and in other ways, we have completely crippled ourselves with technology. I was looking at like things online recently, and it's the new generation of people, and it's shown that blue light can really affect you quite heavily.
Sure.
And TikTok and things, I like TikTok to some degree. I think it can be fun, but I will not lie to you, doom scrolling for hours always takes it out of me. And we are literally giving children at the earliest stage of like probably, I don't know,
2 o'clock, 2 o'clock, age 2. Yeah, you see them in the buggies, don't you? And they're clutching their iPads.
I was walking around Aldi at one point and I just saw a kid like with a full phone, and I was sitting there and I was like, bro, I didn't get a phone until I was like 8, 9, maybe 10 I think it was actually, or whatever, and it was a crap phone. It wasn't an amazing phone. It was it was a Blueberry, I think my first ever
Blackberry.
phone was, or Blackberry. Yeah, okay, it's a Blackberry.
Blueberry sounds
Blueberry,
nice.
yeah, so you know, they should make a new brand. But yeah, we are literally killing our attention span.
Absolutely.
And we are going to go backwards with evolution. You know, ADHD is now more common than it was years ago.
Well, I did this article on is society, or the way that we live, basically predisposing us to ADHD, and it is because the way that we live, you know, the short concentration span that we have is because of the way that the world works around us.
There are theories about AI actually being able to take over a lot of jobs, which is
that's true. It can now.
It already is.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
There are people who are saying, like, I've talked to someone recently about AI, and that person was basically saying how AI wasn't going to take over things, but there is definitely a correlation with technology nowadays, phones, etc., things that have helped us, and AI. And AI is advancing so much quicker than we thought it would, and it is slowly and surely becoming AI general intelligence, or
ubiquitous.
General intelligence. Yeah.
Absolutely. And interestingly, I know that you don't tend to watch the news so much, as a lot of people don't, but there was recently talk, because there's always talk about regulating AI, as you can imagine, so to make sure that it doesn't go too far. But I noticed that the United States and the UK both refused to participate in this regulatory discussions and move forward with that, which kind of worried me, that the UK is allying itself with the US in terms of, you know, kind of the commercial interest side, rather than keeping people safe and keeping the world safe, really.
There's no regulation on AI. There's literally no regulation. Like, it will, I think AI will spasm into something we can't control one day. And if I'm going to be honest, not to fearmonger, but I do think it will be the end of humanity. Like, in the most extreme case, and as people who I do not agree with, like Elon Musk, he has also said that AI will be something that is very dangerous because it's not regulated. We need to be very careful of it. It could do damage to people's morale by taking jobs and doing things like that. Because there's one thing with, you know, like, people taking jobs from other people, but there's definitely a huge thing of a robot who doesn't need to be paid taking jobs from a person who does.
Yeah. And I mean, we've seen this year an avalanche of jobs being shed. Yeah. And that's just going to accelerate. But I think Elon Musk is one of the people that doesn't want the AI sector to be regulated, because he's, you know, that's where his chips are placed, aren't they? So unfortunately, he's the problem rather than the solution, in my view. It's fascinating, but people's livelihoods are at the end of the line, aren't they? So although it's interesting as a kind of academic discussion or an intellectually interesting discussion, you know, the way that I always want to discuss things with people is, well, what are the real world repercussions? How does this factor into people's lives at the end of the day? And not well is the answer. I mean, there's going to be a short-term improvement for people to be able to use AI to do things to help their, I don't know, job search even, or their work. So pretty soon they won't be needed to do that work. So the short-term gain will be very short-term, and then they'll be potentially on a scrap heap. Anyway, not a very good, positive way of it's like ending the show, but you know,
it's going to end the world. Oh God.
But I think we've talked about quite a few really interesting topics today, Kat. So thank you very much for participating. I hope you found it interesting also.
Hell yeah.
And I wish you well for the future.
Thank you. It's been lovely being your guest.
Thanks, Kat.
Goodbye, podcast.